And welcome everyone to another Smart Money Circle episode. I'm Adam Sarhan. With me today is Ali Kashani, who's the co-founder and CEO of SERV Robotics. Ticker symbol is SERV. Ali, thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to the Smart Money Circle.
Thanks for having me.
Before we jump into the company, Ali, I know you have a lot of really cool things that you're doing at SERV. Please tell us your story and how you got to where you are today.
Where do I begin? I've been an entrepreneur for since basically graduating from college. Started a number of companies, had a few exits along the way, but most recently I sold a company to Postmates, which was one of the largest food delivery platforms in the country. That was back in 2017. I joined Postmates to start a number of initiatives there. One of the main ones was around robotics for last mile transportation. And I'll just quickly fast forward before telling you about the company and what we do, just through the timeline. A few years after that, Uber acquired Postmates, so we joined Uber. And then in 2021, I spun out my team out of Uber and we became an independent company, which is now known as SERV Robotics. And then last year, we listed on Nasdaq. So about 3 years after spinning off. So it's been about 8 years working on this project, which I'm excited to tell you more about. But it's a lot of transactions and ups and downs along the way.
I love it. I love your website, which says why deliver 2 pound burritos and 2 ton cars. So for the audience that's not familiar with Serve yet, I strongly recommend everyone get familiar with them because it's clearly the future. Please let us know a little about your company, what you do, and some of your competitive advantages.
Sure. So as I said, it's about bringing automation to last mile transportation. But let me take a step back. There are certain problems in life that I feel like we are just so used to, we don't see them anymore. This is one of those problems. Right now, if you order something from China, it costs about $2 to get that to your front door here in the US. But if you order it from Chinatown, it will cost about $10. So 5,000 miles is $2, but 5,000 feet is $10. It's upside down. It's absurd. And the reason for that is we've brought so much efficiency and automation to long distance shipping, but we have done very little of that in last mile. So, for example, a single cargo ship today, with about 20 sailors on board, moves as much goods as the entire British Navy of 100,000 people did a couple hundred years ago. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
like each worker doing the work of 5,000 people. Now, a postal worker today, compared to the time of horses and bogies, so like over 100 years ago, they do the work of two postal workers, not 5,000 or 500 or even 50, just two. And the reason is, I mean, if you think about it, it's obvious. Someone is literally walking every single package, big or small, all the way to your front door, which I think one day we're going to look back and think is just so absolutely absurd that this was required. And it's because obviously navigating 3D environments is really challenging. With ships, you make them bigger and bigger, and few people can be the brain of the ship. But when you are moving things in last mile, you have to have every package attached to a human. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. We're starting with food because you eat 3 times a day, you need the food right away. It's the most expensive kind of last mile transportation, so it's a good place to get started. But we are obviously, expecting that this technology is going to be used for any kind of last mile transportation. So just to kind of give you a bit of a sense of where the company is today, we have robots right now in Los Angeles. We've had them for a few years. In Miami, very soon in Dallas and Atlanta. We have a few hundred robots right now. If you go to LA, for example, where I am right now, you can open Uber Eats, order from more than 1,000 restaurants right now, and one of our robots would bring you your food. As long as you're in a mile and a half radius, which by the way, more than half of deliveries in the city are less than a mile and a half. So you can actually get robot deliveries. To people of Los Angeles, it's the most normal thing. To people outside of Los Angeles, they almost don't believe me. And now we are bringing 2,000 of these robots across the country by the end of this year through our partnership with Uber Eats. So that's very quick, high level perspective on the company.
I love it. I think this has a much broader application that last mile. You're starting with food, understandably and very smartly so, because like you said, 3 times and it has to be fresh, and it's a very costly thing for a food delivery business. So if you can automate it and take out a lot of that cost, there's obviously a lot of margin there and there's a lot of room for growth. But there's also applications outside of food. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I see food as the book to our Amazon. You need
Got
that first killer application to get the system going, basically, to bootstrap the platform, which is this network of robots that are out there, that are at your disposal whenever you need them. We have APIs that anyone can use to request a robot to go pick up something from A and drop it at B. But food is just a really great way of getting all of that started because it's the most expensive and it's the place where we can capture the most value. Um, Now, over time, you can expect pharmacy, parcels, obviously groceries. There's a long list. In fact, I would expect there would be new things people are gonna do when last mile gets to be, $1 rather than $10 that it is today. Like the kind of things that we don't even do today because it's too expensive, they become viable as you actually bring that cost down.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. So let's talk about risk management. How do you handle risk, and what are some mistakes you see people make with respect to risk management, please?
I have a whole, I guess, school of thought around, startups and what we are really doing as founders, as entrepreneurs, which is all about actually managing uncertainty. I want to distinguish that from risk. It's usually lumped together. To me, risk is known unknowns. It's the stuff that you know you don't know. So you can usually get insurance for it, or there's some way of underwriting it. The really challenging stuff is the uncertainty. It's the unknown. And we swim in the uncertainty kind of sea because what we're doing has never been done before. Generally, that's the case for startups. They're going into the uncharted. And there is only one way to deal with unknown unknowns, which is you just need to go out there and find out. So you need to be optimizing for learning. This is why like Silicon Valley has always been about failing fast. It's, iterate quickly, test things end to end, put things in front of customers. Within 5 days of starting this project inside Postmates, we actually had a robot on the sidewalk because we
Oh,
wanted to
wow.
see what that looks like. You could spend months, even a year, to build your first robot. We assembled something together just so that we can go outside and we immediately learned a whole bunch of important things that would have that had we not known, we could have spent months doing the wrong stuff. So our approach to risk management, really uncertainty management, has been try to learn quickly by experimenting fast and being in the field. We have a saying in the company, truth is on the sidewalk. So we try not to guess in a lab. We try to actually go out there and find out.
That is so powerful. I love that. You launched the robot in 5 days. That's unbelievable. All right, let's talk about timeless lessons. What are some timeless lessons you've learned about business, life, anywhere you want to go, please?
Yeah, obviously, a lot of my experiences are around startups, having been through this process. And um, I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned is about perseverance, um, especially in the startup land when you are, again, in novel ideas and things that haven't been tried before. Timing is obviously important. If you're too early, that could be fatal. But it turns out the most important quality is just can you survive? This was very important, especially in the last few years, where there are a lot of similar efforts in robotics or this kind of innovative projects inside bigger organizations that died when the market turned down, or private companies that ran out of money. So we had a very simple model from the beginning, and I learned that in my first company. We almost ran out of money. We had like a couple of months of runway, but somehow we always managed to find a way to, get to the next milestone and get past these issues. And eventually, the company sold for like 100 million, and it was a big success. So I applied the same to SERV from the beginning, which was I don't know how long this is going to take, but our job is to just make sure we persevere through the thick and thin. And there are times where the robotic space looks so exciting and autonomy, and there was like so much money being invested in 2019, 2018. And then suddenly everything dies down and there's no more investment. So I always had this upfront conversation with the team that this hype curve, we're going to be at the peak one day and then we are going to be at the trough another day. How do we put ourselves in a position where we can be cockroaches rather than unicorns, because unicorns don't survive nuclear winters, but cockroaches do. And this worked really well for us because once the market turned down, we were really efficient. And again, despite not having a lot of runway, we managed to just find our way to the IPO. And at that point, we've raised like 270 million since. We've been in a really good financial position to go build up thousands of robots. So perseverance to me is always the number one quality for entrepreneurs, and I think that applies to a lot of aspects of life.
I love that. How about the other side of that? What are some timeless mistakes you've seen people make, you've made? How do you learn from them, avoid them? Anywhere you want to go, please.
Yeah, I think uh, I go back to the hype problem. So um, jumping into hypes is usually a mistake I try to avoid because usually by the time it's a hype, you're too late. And the best case scenario is you've been preparing for something for years before everybody starts paying attention. So again, robotics right now is again seeing another resurgence. But I feel very fortunate that we've been working on it for a number of years to be in the position we are. But then a lot of folks have this tendency, especially like new graduates or employees looking for good places to work, who I've seen jump from one hype to another. It's NFTs today, and then tomorrow it's AI, and then after that it's something else. And my advice to them is usually like just pick something you really like that you fundamentally believe in and just stick with it, because the true value is going to come when you actually stay around long enough to see something through. And this hypiness bothers me a lot about our industry. It's just VCs unfortunately contribute to it, entrepreneurs contribute to it, everybody jumps on bandwagons. But what we should all do is really have deep belief about something, conviction about something, and just kind of stick with it long enough to really see the value come through.
Yeah, so you're saying is don't jump from shiny object to shiny object to shiny object, to have that perseverance and have that conviction to make sure you can see things through. I love that. So let's talk about leadership. You've been around, you've been several companies, you're a serial entrepreneur, you've sold, you've bought companies, sold companies, all this kind of fun stuff. What makes a great leader, and anything you want to share about leadership, please?
These are very broad questions. um, I think everybody has their own style. I want to admit that there's a lot of different ways to approach this problem, and I can share what works for me. Um, I, I think this is a cliche, but I always like to make sure I'm surrounded with people who are smarter than me. And the key, though, is once you have those people in the room, what do you do? Um, and I've kind of studied this from a perspective of the what contributes to happiness in life, which is people like to have autonomy, they like to have mission, they like to have good people they're working with, so that the team is really important to them, and they like to have mastery. Those are the four kind of ingredients. So as a leader, I feel like my job is to make sure that those ingredients are provided to the people that I've brought together. If I can give them that, then they can go on to do incredible things, and we can be successful together. So obviously the team is the first piece. Just don't hire pardon my language, don't hire assholes, basically. People who have low ego, that want to just collaborate, and you want to wake up every day and go work with. That's kind of number one rule. Mastery is easy for us because we are all working on something that we are experts in. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. But where it starts to break down is usually around autonomy. If you don't give people the space to do what they need to do, and if you're constantly kind of micromanaging them, or you don't have confidence in them, that becomes an issue. There's a whole debate in Silicon Valley about this thing called founder mode, where people are wondering how much founders have to be hands-on. I think I pick my topics. I decide, okay, here's an area right now that this organization needs my really kind of focused attention. And then other places I need to give people space. And again, I've brought people who are smarter than me in those aspects for a reason. So give them that autonomy to go do what they need to do. And of course we have this big mission that we're all oriented around. So that's the four ingredients. And I feel like my job is to be the person who creates that environment for people to have that. The results are have been pretty good for us. We have really low churn in our organization. So there are people who came with us out of Postmates 4 years ago, who are still around. Like maybe 80% of them are still here 4 years later, which is really good for Silicon Valley, where people, move after a year and a half on average. So I think we've done a good job creating that environment for folks, and that's served us well.
I love that. So let's talk about adversity, another key trait that's required to be successful. How do you handle adversity, overcome obstacles, and anywhere you want to go with respect to dealing with adversity?
Yeah, well, I guess there's a couple of ingredients to it. The first one is um, you need to have conviction that what you're doing is worth doing, because I mean, honestly, life is short. If you're working on something that's not gonna go anywhere, there are a lot of opportunities to go create incredible things right now. So this is where, first principle thinking comes in. You need to really, rather than jumping on hypes, basically, which is all validation that's external and it changes. Today, everybody's excited about this, and tomorrow they're not anymore. So, and when you're an entrepreneur specifically, you're going to hear a lot of no's. I think we had like maybe 200 VCs that said no to us at one point or another. So you hear a lot of no's. The whole world is telling you you're wrong. So that's the first adversity you need to deal with. And it comes from, first principle thinking. So to me, every time someone said no, I simply revisited my assumptions and asked, did I just learn something new from this conversation that changed something about those fundamental things that I believe in? And if that's not the case, if nothing changed, usually that further deepens my conviction, because I've revisited one more time and it has stood the test of time, basically. So
Yeah,
if I did learn something new, I should change my mind, because there's no point again in insisting on the wrong thing. So that's first principle. You have to have the conviction. The next one is honestly psychological. There's so much of what we do is just in our brain. Um, One thing that I've tried to really develop the muscles on is what I call anticipation pain. Um, if you actually take a stock, I see this is resonating.
I
Um,
love it. Yeah, I love it.
yeah, if you take stock of every time something is bothering you, you're worried about something, and just ask yourself, is this something that has happened yet, or is this a future problem? 99% of the time it's a future problem. And do a follow-up. A few weeks later, come back and ask yourself, did it happen? And you'll be surprised how, again, 99% of the time it never does. So that basically what it means is we spend 99% of our time stressed and worried about things that never happen.
Yeah,
And man, if you can free up that bandwidth of stress, of things that would never happen, that gives you so much more capacity and perseverance, like ability to persevere. So I've been training that muscle for a long time, and I think I've generally gotten better at it over time, but it's still a work in progress. It always is. There are still times where I catch myself worrying about something that's definitely not worth worrying about right now. But it's been one of those things that I've been very deliberately working on, just catching myself in the act of worrying about something that's a future problem, and just parking it in a corner and saying, okay, you know what, this is not something that I should be spending my mental energy on, and I can actually now pay attention to stuff that I have control over and I can do something about.
I love that. So you call that anticipation pain. Is that
That's
correct?
right. That's right.
So I'm curious here because that did strike a chord, and I've noticed as I've interviewed folks that are very successful, there's certain similarity, right? Success leaves clues. So do you have a routine and morning routine, afternoon, evening? Do you do meditation, any type of structure to help you almost like defrag the computer where you get rid of all the stuff, put it in the trash, and then reset any way you want to word it? How do you get rid of that or reprogramming from the worry to the positive and free up that mental bandwidth?
Yeah, there is a lot of debate again around, you have to be working really, really hard and 100 hours a week. I actually think that having time to think is really, really important. Some of the best work I do is when I have space to actually think. And I believe if that's true for me, it should be true for for everybody else in my team as well. Because at the end of the day, we are working on, you know, we are knowledge workers. At the end of the day, we are working on, technology, and a lot of the decisions we make are the most important output of our work. So I do try to have free time to think. So at the minimum, for example, on the weekends, I want to have space to be able to actually reflect on things. So it's hard to do that during the week when you have meetings, but at the minimum, carve some time out on weekends for that. And the rest of that, no, I don't actually have any specific routines, but this is a silly one. But like after the day is done, I kind of need Netflix to just calm down. I just like sit somewhere and shut down my brain and switch from the high intensity mode to like family mode. It takes a little bit of you said defrag, maybe that's what it is, but like sit in front of some favorite show and just let the brain kind of calm down into a normal mode.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. So, final question for you. What is the best piece of advice you'd like to give the audience or your 30-year-old self?
That's a good question. I think so. I have two teenage daughters, and sometimes I see the anxiety about the future, and they are always questioning everything. And now with AI, there's a lot of questions around that. I guess one thing is I am such an optimist about the future, and it's something that I always preach. Um, there is a really interesting account on Twitter called Pessimist Archives. I'm a big fan of that account because it posts these newspaper clippings of people's reaction in the past, like 50 years ago or whatever, to I don't know, the invention of television or radio or bicycles or just anything that was considered novel and new at the time. And you read these things and it kind of makes you realize how similar our reactions are to new technology every time, including our reaction to AI today, which is this fear and anxiety. And a lot of it is just unfounded. Again, goes back to my point about anticipated pain, which is, we are so quick to find all the ways things could go wrong. And a lot of times, we can't even really name them. We just have this really negative feeling about the future. But then you look at the reality and like, sure, there are challenges. Technologies have had their problems, but the grand scheme of things, the world has never been more prosperous. We have to such a large degree eliminated many diseases and hunger and other things. And yes, there's so much work to do, but it's getting better. It's only getting better. So I like to remind my daughters and folks that ask me this question. I think we should be really, really excited about what's happening today. We are commoditizing intelligence. Like imagine every child having a tutor in their pocket that's better than any tutor the richest person could have paid for 2 years ago. I mean, that's incredible. Imagine what it's gonna do to healthcare. And yes, there is risk about misinformation. We have to take care of people, when it comes to jobs. Like all those things are true, but I just can't stop being excited about what this future is gonna look like. And I think people who are again younger should go in here and be excited and look for ways to be part of this wave rather than be afraid of it and kind of check out, which is some of the reactions that I sometimes see. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. So that optimism is another theme that's repeated multiple times, another pattern. So I'm absolutely loving this. All right, beautiful. Well, Dr. Ali, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been absolutely fantastic. All the best success for you and SERV in the future. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon because I really, really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.